Autumn Brown, frontwoman of the soul pop band Autumn, a queer science fiction writer, a theologian, a mother of dragons, and a healing justice facilitator for social movements, living on Dakota and Anishinaabe land currently known as Minneapolis. And I'm Adrienne Marie Brown, a luscious Black queer witch writer auntie, an apocalyptic cosmic optimist, and a gardener of healing ideas. I live in the land of the Okinichi, Shikori, Skarura, Tuscarora, Eno, and Lumbee peoples. And this is How to Survive the End of the World. Our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity. As a reminder, we have no ads. We are listener supported. So join our Patreon for exclusive content. Wow. Do you think anyone could tell? I don't think so. I think we totally pulled that off. And if you don't know what we're talking about, that's because we pulled it off. Okay. Now. Oh, hello, my loves. Hello. All right. We are here today because we're bringing you yet another artist fractal episode. Small bite fractal artist. A moose-bush. An aperitivo. Tiny. A tapas, if you will. Yeah, it's very cute. And we are bringing you our practices that work for us as artists, as writers, what makes it possible for us to do what we do. And, you know, take what works for you and leave the rest is my orientation to everything that we're sharing in these little episodes. And today, and all of life. Today, we wanted to talk about our processes for storyboarding and structuring big projects. Yeah. And storyboarding is one of those funny things that I think, like, when I hear the word storyboarding, I immediately think like animated movie, you know? Absolutely. Okay, goofy. Right, exactly. You know, it feels very, I think for many years I related to it as something that people who made films do. Yes. But I have, and they do. But I have found it to be a really important part of really any big project that I do, both my fiction work and my nonfiction work, I do storyboarding for. And it doesn't look the same based on whether it's fiction or nonfiction, but I have found it to be helpful. Do you do storyboarding? You know, it's so funny because I'm like, I'm excited we're doing these fractals for folks because our writing approaches are actually pretty different from each other. And I have not done much storyboarding, or like sometimes I'll do it, but it feels like I think we're supposed to do this, but you know, like, so I'll be like, I should do something, but it's not the part of my process, but structuring is a major part of my process. And I think might be related. So it's like, instead of putting it up on a wall, putting it up in a space in that way. Right. For me, it's like my mind, I'm like, I need to make the outline and then remake the outline. And then I need my documents to all be in that outline and create an outline of like the buckets and like kind of what each part needs to do. And I think that structuring process feels very aligned with what storyboarding does. It's just, it's just totally like a different way of doing that work of like, I need to organize my project in a way that I can understand and interact with. And especially when it's that big, to be like, if I'm going to start here and I want to end here, you know, how is that going to possibly happen? How will I cover all this ground? Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, I can talk a little bit about the visual component of storyboarding. And then maybe you can pick up with the way that you do your structuring of a major project, and we can kind of see like what the similarities are. Awesome. So just to like really simplify for listeners. So for me, when I say storyboarding, I really do mean taking the component parts of a big writing project and making each of those components into a visual element that I can post onto a wall. And that could look like color-coded Post-it notes. That can look like index cards that I have like handwritten on and taped to the wall. It can include other images that I've decided to pull in that represent parts of my book. But the key element is that it's something that's physical and visual that can be put up in front of you in a space in a way that sort of gives you a sense of like the map of your work. If you're writing a novel, for instance, and you're writing kind of in like a 3-act play structure, which a lot of fiction works are written in, then you would maybe have like the 3 sections of your book would actually have their own sections on a wall in front of you. And then specific chapters or scenes within each of those sections would have their own maybe color-coded areas on the wall. And one of the things that can be really helpful when you are visually mapping out your project is that you can actually start to see, you start to see how everything works together. And then you can also use the visual mapping as a way to make decisions about what is negotiable and what's not negotiable in the story. And I think that for me, this felt in a way even more true with writing my nonfiction work, because I think nonfiction, this is arguable. I definitely had a point in my process where I was like, there is still a main character of this book and there is still a plot that is unfolding here, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Arguably, there is more flexibility with nonfiction work in terms of ordering the experience that the reader is having as they're moving through the book. Like if you think about, I'm writing a nonfiction book, as the writer, what I'm really doing is guiding the reader through content. I'm guiding them through an experience that they are having with these ideas. Yeah. And so I have a lot of flexibility around how I'm going to guide the reader through this experience of receiving these ideas. And I think that storyboarding can be helpful in terms of really giving myself as the guide a feeling of flexibility. Like I feel very responsible for the experience that my reader is going to have. Mm-hmm. But even with that level of responsibility, I need to have a sense of some flexibility that these ideas are all in conversation with each other and they could be introduced. And there's a few different orders in which the ideas could be introduced, and that the different order is going to create a different experience for the reader. Yeah. And I think that the storyboarding, the visual component, helps me as the guide kind of have a sense of what is the experience going to be for the reader? And is that experience the one that I want them to have?
I love that. Yeah. I love that. I think it's really helpful to hear too, because I'm like, I think my process is emergent structuring. And so there is an aspect of all of this, but I think what happens for a while is like, I'm writing and then being like, what would I call this bucket or this chapter or this story? What would I call this? Right. Now that I have written, I'm like, this is about the body. And so are these other 5 pieces. I think I have a chapter about my body. Okay, cool. Then that emerges. And then I'm like, oh yes. And when I start a book, I'm like, what is the raw material that I already have? And what are the buckets that have already emerged of that raw material? Right. And then I start to be like, okay, now this is the structure. But the whole time I have to keep telling myself, and it may not be the structure. You may change it all completely. You might drop off one of these buckets. Like I have to stay in the flexibility, right? To be like, you still have agency. You still get to decide what this is. Yeah. And something new might emerge as you're in the writing process. But now I think of it as like, this is the skeletal structure, right? And the stories and the narratives and everything, you're going to build the muscle. And then finally, you're going to make it beautiful and you're going to add the skin to it. But first, you got to just get the skeletal structure. Like, what is the bones? What's the thing that makes this sturdy? And I work with Scrivener most of the time for my book projects in the early phases. So Scrivener, if folks are listening, they're like, what technology, what software, what are the programs you use? I use Scrivener and I then often use Pages. Pages allows you to like go back and forth and get edits from other people. Scrivener makes that very complicated. I've never been able to figure it out, but Scrivener I like because you can have whole chapters or whole sections of your work that you can very easily move around and rearrange. So for someone like me who's emergent structurally, I'm able to create that skeleton and then be like, okay, now I'm going to move these pieces. And whenever I see people who do storyboarding, I'm so into the folks who are like, yeah, I'm using these Post-it things so I can move it over here if I need to, or I can shift the structure as I'm understanding it. But I also find, back to our last episode, it helps so much with like writer's block or anything that happens to be like, I can see the whole arc.
Yes.
And even if I have nothing to say about this part of the arc right now, there's always some place where I will have something to say about this whole arc. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I wanted to note is I always leave room for the uncategorizable, like the thing that's like, I don't know what this is. It might be material that flows throughout. It might be footnotes. It might be a joke. It might be a joke I want to add in the audiobook only or something later, but there's just a little place where I'm like, it's very important to me to take it seriously that like everything I'm thinking of that seems related to this book, I want to make sure that the structure I'm holding has some room for all of it, even the miscellaneous bits, so that when I'm going through at the end and being like, okay, is this finished? Often that happens where I'll then go and in that little miscellaneous drawer, be like, one more little gem, one more little thing, right? And I think the structure also allows you to trim the fat, like really be able to be like, okay, I think most of us repeat ourselves without recognizing it. That's just kind of how humans communicate. Totally. And that's very, very true in a book form, especially if you're like, I think early on in your ideation, you can be like, I only have this one idea. Like I don't have 70 pages on it or 100 pages on it. Like, it's just like, here it is. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in the fleshing it out, you can kind of cover the same territory. I feel like doing that structural move helps me be like, oh, I already talked about this over here. I don't need to come back to it here. I can reference this. Like the structure also helps you recognize like, what is the essence? How do I pare down to like, what's the essence here? What I really want to be in this project.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And actually it's like whether you're storyboarding or whether you're structuring within a software, it is really helpful. Both of those processes are helpful in terms of identifying and recognizing as you named, the like if repetition is likely to happen, it may be that the repetition needs to happen because you might be covering ground in a way where you actually need to return to material in like a few times across the scope of a book. But you want to make sure that it is happening on purpose and that every time you're returning to it in a way that's adding a layer or deepening rather than accidentally repeating yourself in a way that's like not useful to the reader. And so that the storyboard and the structure helps you really be able to recognize like, how are you actually chunking out the work? And how are you building, again, whether it's fictional or non-fictional, how are you building a world that your reader is going to inhabit? And I think that one of the reasons why I like the storyboard model is that it is really visual. And that's important because when you're reading a book, as the reader, you are visualizing a world.
That's right.
And that world is only to some extent informed by the way the writer is writing it. There's a lot as a reader.
Hook into your experience.
You're right. Yeah, you're going to hook it into your own experience and you're going to be visualizing the world. But as the writer, you need to give your reader markers. Like they need landmarks that then go inside the landscape that they are creating for themselves. And I think that those structural, like the way that you structure your book as you're working on it, or the way that you structure, I mean, again, and this doesn't have to be specific to like long form book projects. I think this happens for short stories. It happens for music projects. It's like, the way that you're sort of, even if you're thinking about just like writing a song, every song has parts. It has a verse, it has a chorus, it has a pre-chorus, it has a bridge, it has an instrumental section. Like, it doesn't necessarily have all of those parts, but in a song, any one of those parts is going to have meaning as to why it's there. And so if you're going to if you're going to play around with the structure, you're going to want to know why you're playing with it, because if you make a different choice than what the listener is like accustomed to hearing, it's going to be very meaningful to them. Right.
That's right. Yeah. So there's something I want to share here, and then there's something I want to ask you. Mm-hmm. The thing I wanted to share is also like, as you said, like you may or may not use stuff. I think it also allows stuff to fall away. Like there's a way that like at first, especially when I'm working on a book, like I tend to have things very, like, oh, it's these 5 sections. Now I understand it's these 5 sections, and I'll get very like categorized about them. And then I'll let that fall away as I get more intimate with the text. Then I can be like, oh, it's actually these 3 or it's these 7 or something else. Like there's something about you're just giving yourself enough form, enough structure, enough visual to get going, to get like, I understand how to move my project. And I love what you said about, it's about where I want people to land or how I want people to experience it. Like so much of it is like, how do I structure this? So it's kind of like you're creating the translation code between your mind and the minds of your readers, right? It's like all this stuff is in here right now, and I've got to create a code by which it comes out and can be communicated to someone else.
Yes.
The question I had for you is, as we're having this talk, I'm like, part of why I do everything in Scrivener on my computer, on my phone, is because I'm like, this is always with me. So I can always work on my book no matter where I am. And when you do the visual storyboarding, like what you just did, when you flew to another place from your home, so you've like got your whole writing set up at home, is the storyboard, do you build it in such a way that it's transportable, or do you make a new one when you get where you're going, or like how do you navigate that part?
It depends. So in this case, because by the time I left my home to work to finish the book, I was on the precipice of finishing and the structure was set. Right. And so there was pretty much by the time I was flying to North Carolina, I was like, I'm past the point where I'm needing to think about the book in that way. Yeah. But when I was actively working on my novel, when I would go on writing retreats, I would take the storyboard physically. I had it on index cards. So I would take it with me, and then I would bring it wherever I was and put it up on the wall, like either using pins or tape or whatever. But yeah, it was mobile, and it needed to be because of where I was in the process.
That's great.
I'm sure that there are, there's so many like, virtual tools now for Post-it boards, like, so I'm sure
all kinds of like collaboration boards and all kinds of stuff. And
I'm sure that there are ways to do it. But for me, I really like the physicality of it. I'm such a Luddite in some ways. And I really, really like I love a fucking journal, and I love I really love the physicality of it. I like writing things and scratching them out and like getting ink on my hands, like that part of the experience for me, that the tactile part of it feels really good to me. And so that's kind of my orientation, but I'm sure that there are ways to make it mobile.
Yeah. I've definitely seen some different like mind mapping tools and like, sort of creative organizational tools. And so that, I'm like, readers, listeners, if you're like, oh yeah, I've got some other ideas, like those, share them in the commentary, like let people know. But I will say for me, like, I love the balance between structure and then chaos, like being like, I've got a whole chaotic thing. And I know that for me, like, on my phone, I just keep a blank document, or like a document that I'm constantly filling up with just each random thing that I want to have in the book. Right. And even the process of moving it into the structure is a way that I get writing each day, right? As I'm like, okay, totally. I did all this. Now I'm at my computer. Let me move it into my structure. And just that process reminds me what I have, makes me feel abundant, makes me feel like, great, I've done a writing task already for my day. So I offer that because I'm like, the structure can be a way for you to feel good about what you're doing each day and have a sense of, I'm contributing to the whole. I can see myself moving along.
Last thing I'll say about this, and then I know we have to close, but what you just said prompted for me this, just the like, it is, if you're doing a big creative project, it is a really good idea to just keep a separate journal.
Oh, yes.
That is not where like another way that you are writing or creating or doodling or some other way that you are engaging your creativity that's not for the for the sake of the book.
Oh yeah.
Or for the sake of the album, or for the sake of the painting, or whatever, whatever your medium is. But I think that like, that's the other place where this isn't exactly about storyboarding or structure, but one of the places where we can get kind of tripped up is if we overinvest in the big project as the only thing that
has to hold and say and do
everything. So it's like really good to just, and this is where like Artist's Way morning pages kind of style can be really helpful for people. Just like having a practice where you are just journaling every day, or just whatever, like something else that you're doing that is taking care of your creativity, tending your creative garden. That is not about the project is very, very helpful.
Well, and I actually think that has a lot to do with structure, because it's a way to me that you're honoring. It's like, okay, I have come up with some structure and now I'm creating this other place for anything that doesn't fit inside that structure, whatever it is, or other places. Right. So it's really helpful for me right now to be like, this is my love content. And I have another place that's just my writings about Palestine, and another place that's just my writings about revolution, and another place that's just songwriting, and another place that's something else.
Right.
And I'm like, when something comes that belongs in a different structure, it can go there. And I don't have to bend this structure or break it in order to make it try to hold that thing. And that, again, is also one of my favorite tasks of structure, is going through it again and again and being like, oh, that doesn't actually go in this book. That doesn't actually go in this.
That is a whole other book.
It's a whole other book, darling. Deal with it. I'm impossible. So I feel
amazing.
I feel grateful that we had this conversation, because now I'm sort of like, maybe I should like, I'm just looking around my house. I'm like, what would it look like if I tried to put a book
your storyboard would be fucking dope, because you have great handwriting and you're really good at drawing. So
no, I'm like, I think it could be really pretty, but I'm afraid I would procrastinate, because I would be like so focused on making it so gorgeous. But
it would just become a part of your process, darling.
That's true.
Thank you for listening to our show. We're on Instagram at End of the World PC.
You can make a sustaining donation to our show by visiting our page at patreon.com/endoftheworldshow.
Another incredible thing you can do to help our show sustain itself is to write us a review on Apple Podcasts if you're an iPhone person. This helps people looking for good new content to find us instead of Ezra Klein. Thanks.
I can't believe you just said that. Ezra. Oh. Okay.
Music for today's show comes from Autumn the Band and Tunde Alaniran.